From the television studios at the Jack J. Valenti School of Communication at the University of Houston, I'm John David Powell, and this is Discovery, the research section of Graffit-e, the electronic newsletter of the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. Each year, the UH Division of Research hosts Undergraduate Research Day to showcase the work of student-faculty teams from across the university. This year, 2 class students received poster presentation awards for their work, showing again that research is not confined to the science labs. Alexandra Canga was one of those class students. Alexandra is a sociology major who looked at love, sex, and risk sexual behaviors among Mexican-American heroin sniffers. And she's a research assistant in the Office for Drug and Social Policy Research in the Graduate College of Social Work. Alexandra worked with Cepeda, assistant professor of sociology in the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences and senior researcher at the Office for Drug and Social Policy Research in the Graduate College of Social Work. Professor Cepeda has written about the relationship between drugs and violence, sex workers on the U.S.-Mexico border, gang-affiliated adolescent females, and risk associated with transitioning to injecting heroin use. She also is co-investigator of a National Institute on Drug Abuse study examining how disaster-related experiences associated with Hurricane Katrina impact changes in substance abuse and use patterns. Professor Cepeda received her Bachelor's of Art and Master's of Science at the University of Texas at San Antonio and her Ph.D. at City University of New York Graduate Center. And it's a pleasure to have both of you with us here. Thank you for showing up today.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your poster award.
Thank you.
So how did this all come about? How did you start working with Professor Cepeda?
Well, I started taking one of her classes called Sociology of Deviance, and it got me interested in the whole deviance and hidden population research. And then I also took her research methods class, and I talked to her about it, and I signed up for the fellowship, and I told her if she could be my mentor, and we kind of just came up with this whole thing.
What do you mean by hidden population?
Hidden population, basically, it hasn't been researched a lot, and basically like drug users or sex workers, which is her main thing. So.
But yours, I understand, started with a study that you did in her class about UH students.
Yes, I started, for her research methods, I did a high-risk sexual behaviors among University of Houston students. And after that, I got so interested in the subject that I went and talked to her about it. So that's basically, my main interest in high-risk sexual behaviors, because it has to do a lot with health, STDs, HIV, which anybody can be affected by. So that's my main thing.
Okay, well that begs the question, what did you find out about what's going on campus?
With the research that I did, the time was so limited that I really didn't have a big sample, so we didn't have any significant findings. But if I took it further, if I could redo the research again, I would probably find significant findings. But the one that I did for class, I think that the sample was so small that it wasn't really significant.
So it wasn't worth coming up with a preliminary...
Well, I learned a lot from it, and I used that in my fellowship that I did with her. So it actually helped me do my research in the summer.
Okay, so this research was, let me get this long name again, it's Love, Sex, and Risk Sexual Behaviors Among Mexican-American Heroin Sniffers.
Yes.
All right, so you've been doing research on that already.
Yes, I've been doing that. That was actually a National Institute of Health study, a 5-year study, looking at heroin sniffers, i.e. non-injecting heroin users. These were young men and women who were using heroin intranasally as opposed to injecting.
Okay.
And so we were interested in looking at some of the factors that would cause these individuals to transition to injecting drug use. So it was actually a prospective cohort study. In other words, we did baseline interviews, and then we did 2 follow-ups at 6-month intervals. So we followed up a cohort sample of 300 male and female.
And this was over in San Antonio?
And this was done in San Antonio.
Okay. So how do you find these people? You go out on the street corner and say, hey, we're doing a study here.
It gets a little more complicated than that, and that's something that we actually tried to expose students like Alexandra to the whole sampling process, all of the methodologies involved in doing studies with populations such as this.
Well, how do you get people involved? You had 300.
We had 300. We had a sample of 300.
How do you find 300 heroin sniffing users in San Antonio?
We got to remember that this was actually funded through NIH, and we had a pretty large budget to be able to hire 2 full-time outreach workers, field workers. And these individuals spent days, nights, hanging out in the streets in the areas that we were focused on recruiting our sample. There was two primary ways of contacting these people. Street recruitment, which is actually, like you said, going up to somebody and saying, hey, I'm doing this study, getting to gain their trust and find out whether or not they would be eligible. The second way is respondent-driven sampling, or snowball sampling. So if I identify you as a heroin sniffer, I would then ask you, well, is there any other friends or people that you know that are also heroin sniffers, and then you in turn would turn me on to that next respondent.
So a referral process.
Yes.
Okay. So what did you find out? And I think one of the things you found out, surprise, surprise, that they also participated in high-risk sexual activity. I can't imagine.
Yes. Well, we were talking about this. Actually, they were most of the sample was engaging in high-risk sexual behavior, which actually caused to show up in the data as non-significant because everybody was so involved in this. But we also found that females, which is the interesting part, that females were actually engaging in high-risk sexual behaviors with high-risk partners, which means, you know, partners that either injected or are injecting heroin, or have various partners. So that's.
So what do we do with this study? We've found out that we have a problem, and we know what the problem is, and we know why they're doing this.
Yeah, and that's something that the main purpose of the study was to look at the influence social networks have on the actual behavior of these drug users. So in other words, people that they engage in sexual behavior with, people that they engage in drug use with, their social people that they go for advice for. So these we identify as networks. So we wanted to find out whether the influence of these networks are actually a predictor in these individuals engaging in high-risk sexual behavior or engaging in high-risk drug use behavior, because we know that once the individual transitions to injecting drug use, they're more prone to or susceptible to becoming HIV infected or having sexually transmitted infections. So what the experience now that Alexandra has had in analyzing the data is now writing up the results and turning it into a publication, a peer-reviewed publication. We hope that these types of findings will contribute to the development of social and policy. In particular, prevention and intervention programs that would specifically target this Mexican-American population.
Right. What do you want to do? You're a senior this year.
Yes.
And what are you going to do after graduation? You're graduating in May.
Yeah. Well, I'm planning to go to grad school.
Okay.
So that's the main thing. I have to take my year E and go through all that process, but hopefully that's what I'll be doing for the rest of my life, just research, and I really like it, so yeah.
Well, good. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And hope all things work out for you. Thank you for being with us and discussing your study. And this is an ongoing study that you have.
We're actually in the final. We're doing analysis now, but we have other NIH studies that are looking at similar populations, both here in Houston and in other cities.
Okay. Thanks for being with us.
Thank
I'm
you.
John David Powell, and thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next month in Graffiti.